Hello everyone, and today we're going to be focusing on developing an academic voice and writing with clarity and authority. So my name is Christine, and I'm an English support tutor. And today we are going to be looking at how we can develop an academic voice in your writing. If you joined me before, you would know that this is part of your academic skills development. And today, we're going to really hone in on what is an academic voice and how to develop yours as an academic writer. So, simply, academic voice is all about presenting ideas with your clarity, authority, and precision. So, by the end of the session, you will know how to distinguish academic writing conversation on how to apply practical strategies to improve your own results. So let's get started. How is academic voice? Have a think about it. You may have heard the term before, and I'm not too sure what it means. I mean, it's something that's slightly contradictory. Academics, and then a voice, because generally academics is like material that you read, it's research, and voice is more like the spoken word. Okay, so let's go together and get into what academic voice is. So, voice is basically the tone and the style that you use in university writing. It's really thoughtful, it's objective, and it's a precise style of writing. So if you're using an academic voice, it shows that you are credible and capable of critical thinking. Now, also will help separate academic writing from your casual, everyday conversation. Okay? So in simple layman terms, it is your tone and your writing style. Okay, so let's get into key features of academic voice. So there are basically four main features. And the first one is one that you may probably know, and that is formality. Okay, so this is when you're avoiding slang and casual phrases like hi there, how are you doing? Or very informal writing or things that you may use. So the second feature is objectivity. Now, simply, objectivity is when you base your argument on evidence and not personal feelings. Okay? So, for instance, based on, so if you say the sky is blue, you'll need to answer that by research that also says the sky is blue. And then while you do enter it, you may find that the sky will not be necessarily blue. Because once you find research to support those claims, you are heading in a good direction. But remember, that brings us to point number four that we'll touch on the cautiousness. Okay. So, number one, formality. Number two, objectivity. And number three, clarity and precision. So, here you want to choose exact words to avoid confusion. Now, there may be a lot of jargon in your field of study, so you want to make sure the words you are choosing mean exactly what you're trying to say. Also, if you read a lot of journals, you may find sometimes it's wordy, or you know what really is trying to say. And you can avoid that in your writing by focusing on clarity and precision. Now, consciousness is the fourth feature. We did touch on it slightly when I spoke about objectivity, but I want to like get into a little bit more. So consciousness is when you are going to use appropriate language. And the language you would use is pidgin language, okay? So a lot of studies are still ongoing. Even though a study may have been published in 2022, and it's been confirmed and other research has supported it, there may be studies that are still ongoing and currently that may reveal a slightly different take on the studies that was published. So in order for you to present yourself as a writer who is erring on the side of caution, then you will choose hedging terms like may or suggest. Okay, so these are used when evidence is not absolute. So, for example, if you're talking about gravity, you can see gravity effect. There's will be very few ongoing research that disputes gravity. However, if you're talking about something like social media and its ongoing effects on students, that is current ongoing research, so it is not irrefutable. Okay, so it is that's where you would use your hedging terms. Okay, so it's basically our four key features of academic voice. So when you are developing your writing, are you planning into writing, you want to times your class, you just need to improve it. These are the four things that you need to do. Let's go into the next slide. So, versus academic. Okay, let's informal example. Kind of compare. So everything reads, lots of students don't do well because they don't study enough. Now, fair enough, if you are having a conversation with someone who knows science, you may just be asking of yours. However, you want to work with this with an academic frame. You would need to back up the statement with research because otherwise it's just saying with your personal opinion, which we have learned from academic research. So that's how we have a statement needs to be supported by research. Okay, so let's look at how we can rewrite that in an academic sense. So many students perform poorly due to insufficient study practices. So the language has changed. Okay. Firstly, we have a very informal months. Okay, and that's changed now. Many we had don't do well. Those were three words. And if you want to be precise, we have this word, and that's poorly. Okay. And we also have don't study enough. So enough is quite colloquial, and we have swapped that with insufficient study practices. Now, you may already incorporate this by use of adding in your research to back up any claims that you are making. However, if you don't, or you're in the practice of trying to switch out and you're just unsure, I would say practice as much as you can, noticing the differences between these two examples. It's not slang in the academic one, it's using precise language. And of course, it is supporting the claim with evidence. And this is an example of an author or researcher who has done research into this topic. So we want to move away from the formal into academic or formal written. We develop academic rules. One of the key things you can do is use the third person, okay? So also imagine yourself looking into the situation as an outsider and not remotely involving yourself. So use the third person instead of personal pronouns where possible. And from vocabulary from your discipline. Now, if I do mention of jargon that's relating to your fields of study, you may have jargon that switches between multiple fields and where possible, use specific words as necessary. Now, I do like to emphasize paraphrasing. Okay, so when you paraphrase, instead of just swapping out words for another synonym, try to rewrite it in a way that shows that you understand what you are writing about. Okay, but if you sort of starting paraphrase and integrating sources into your sentence or sentences are going to be the best way for you to develop your academic course. Okay, and lastly, employee pressure. So avoiding absolutes, as in saying, oh, social media is having a negative effect or impact on students. Okay, so that is saying an absolute. Social media is having a negative effect. You may find a lot of research to support that. However, if you delve into it and look at the topic in an overview, you may find contrasting information as is otherwise. So that is where you will use catching, as to say, social media as apparently or according to this researcher, this shows that um, correlation. However, if you avoid using absolutes, it will show that you're developing negative voice because you understand the nuances of research topics. Well, of course, these are some of the things that you can incorporate to develop your academic voice. Wrong evidence. I think if you have been studying for a while, you understand the impact that evidence has. I know your lecturers probably told you all the time, please provide proof, reference, reference, reference. I think you can never have too many references, okay? So evidence is essential. It strengthens your credibility and it shows that you're engaged with scholarly sources. Now, if you are writing and you have a slight bias in your mind, like I said, it's used to social media having a negative impact on the students. And you say, I absolutely believe social media has a negative impact, okay? And if you were asked to confirm that belief, you'd be like, well, I'm just my person, okay? But the person next to you who suspects you can have a completely different experience, and they can say, well, I disagree, and then quote sources to back up their claim. But it's to you to prevent your writing from being too subjective. So that is really important, okay? Like I said, it helps you to get a full picture understanding rather just looking at one part of the puzzle, you are able to see multiple. So now you read and how you research, begin to develop your understanding about your print. Because your writing will read more like an opinion than an academic argument. So, a news article that you read, maybe it's talking about something controversial. Maybe it's talking about social media affecting sleep patterns, okay? And it's written in a way to gauge your interest for you to either side with the author or side against the author. Now, when you are writing in an academic sense, however, you're not writing for the reader to either agree with you, you simply informing them. Okay. So the reader is left their own devices and reading to see which side of the view they're supporting. So what you said, they say, okay, that's good. I'd like to do additional research into that. So your writing is basically just an overview of it. It's not going to have your personal biases in it. It's not going to be too subjective. It's going to be um, reference only. Now, remember when you are choosing your references, you do want to choose references or evidence that is credible. Okay. If it's published, check where it is being published by, check the date of publication. Research is always ongoing, it changes. So make sure you are reading material that is being supported by other houses or are credible. I would say that on side of caution, if you are reading somebody's thesis, whether it's a master's or a doctoral thesis, remember that's just maybe one overview of their publication. To read, I would say definitely read as far as you can. Read that also to get as much history as you can and keep up to date all kinds of history or research on the said topic. Okay, so we're going to do a little activity and maybe spot the differences. Quite a few sentences here. Okay, so some of them. sentences and sentences, we can work together by solve one thing and identify which sentence is usually often class. Like one, examples allows you to focus on tone, vocabulary, and use of evidence. And for example, here, 2 to 3 minutes to have a complete and then we will check our answers. So let's have a look at the sentences. The first one is some people are just naturally bad at writing essays. Next one, punctuality is valued in higher education and consistent lateness may be perceived as a lack of commitment. In 2019, students mess up their grades because they leave everything to last minute. Next sentence, procrastination is a key factor contributing to reduced academic performance among students. Jones 2020. Teachers don't really care if you're late as long as you show up. Very controversial. The last one, difficulties in academic writing often arise from insufficient training in structuring arguments and integrating sources. Till 2022. Now, there's that without even having to look, I would say the sentences that have evidence or references. Okay, so that takes us to 1, 2, 3. Let's have a quick check. All right, so sentence basically four. Do you apologize? All right, let's go back to that. Let's have a look at this. So, for example, here you go. You can check your sentences if they match. So, informal on orange, and your formal is in the hue of pink. Like I said, academic will generally have a reference attached. Now, you know, academic sentences, they don't have a reference attached, okay? So, choose decipher if it is an academic sentence without a reference. If these are a little easy, just want you to have a quick think about how would you spot an academic sentence if it doesn't have a reference attached to it. Okay, so while you have a think about that, I'll let you mull over it and let you know how you can spot it. So if you are looking for academic sentences that may not have a this or may not have a reference attached to them, just remember when you're developing your paragraph, you would generally start with a topic sentence, then you would have your supporting sentences and your evidence and examples of that, and your concluding sentence. Okay, your concluding sentence could either be relating to the next topic, or it could be, contrast, as in going into a slightly different type of what was said in that paragraph. So not all sentences will have the reference. But when you are looking to identify sentences, so looking at their tongue, you'll be looking at the vocabulary used in that sentence, okay? And of course, if they make use of evidence, if they're referring to things that respond with cohesive devices, that's generally going to be how you can spot. Also, another quick way to spot non-formal sentences is contractions. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a circle around that. Even though don't is a perfectly fine English word, when you're using academic language, avoid using contractions. So just something for you to keep in mind. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Now, like I said, common pitfalls that may exist when writing or developing academic works. Some of them are overusing I think. Okay, so when you ask to perform, this may be a bit tricky when you are asked to provide a personal experience or personal understanding about a topic. Let's say, like, what is your personal understanding about social media? Or what is your personal view about AI? And you think because it has all the personal feelings, it's therefore relating to I think, I believe, I know. However, you have to enjoy the role that you write as a third person. Just avoid using I think, even though it has a suggested as personal or your personal account or personal narrative of the research. Okay. So just catch you out. But now we know. Okay. Now, another technique that exists is net unsupported claims or sweeping generalizations. Now, this can come as something that you're not you may not even be aware of because you wrote a paragraph, let's say you're focusing on AI in university, you're talking about the holistic view of AI, and you add in a reference at the beginning of your paragraph, and then you just keep going with what you have read. Now, the only issue is that reference that you have added in the beginning may relate to a sentence or two, and then all of the sentences that make up the paragraph are unsupported. Okay? So always think whatever writing you do has to be carried up on the backs of other researchers. It's not just you writing by yourself, it's you writing using knowledge that exists in the form of research, and then sort of utilizing that to develop your own writing. Okay. So that supports the claims. You may innocently think I have a reference or two, that's fine. But remember, every claim you make should be supported. Okay. Sweeping generalizations. This is very important to just remember to keep your biasness in check. Maybe you may have a very positive view about the same topic, and therefore you would only look for research that supports this positive view of it. So just keep that in mind. Emotional bias language. Now, let's say it's a very controversial subject that you are asked to research, and it doesn't bring up the most positive emotions, or it does bring up really positive emotions. And you want the person reading to understand that you really feel strongly about this, okay? Now, when you think about academic writing, you leave your emotions at the door, okay? So it doesn't come along with you. It doesn't translate to your writing at all. There are other ways that you can show that you have been well read and you have a very grounded um, view about this, but avoid using emotions or biased language. Okay, that also ties into your sweeping generalizations and unsupported claims. And you can also use practice with wordy or vague sentences. Okay, so avoid these lies like precise, being objective, and using evidence-based writing. If you can avoid these pitfalls, you will develop your academic voice seamlessly. If it only was that easy. Okay, so let's get down to some practical strategies. So I've spoken a bit today about academic voice, what it is, how to incorporate it. Let's talk about ways we can actually hold it, okay? So I would suggest that you read journal articles to get a sense of style. Now, a lot of writers may present their way, they work differently, they may style it in a different manner to what you may have seen. So, in order to find a writing style that you resonate with most or makes the most sense to you unfortunately have to spend a lot of time writing. Okay. I want you to think about when you are doing research and you come across journals and you're reading it and you're like, okay, this research seems really exciting. I want to read all the way through. And then think about when you find another journal that you read a couple of sentences in and you're just like, no, no thanks, not for me, let me close imagine. So you would resonate more with the first author whose writing is clear and has engaged you and you'll read it through. But the second author, their writing style does not appeal to you. Okay. So look at the author that you like, have a look at what points you enjoy, what can you take away, and think about what you can incorporate from writing into yours. So the thing about academia is that we all learn a bit from each other. Okay, it's nice to reference it accordingly with what you find, but it's made up of luck. Every researcher whose work you have read has read tons of other research as well. Okay? So you're just continuing the cycle. So what I would say is read journals, okay? Um, like something completely different out of what you're studying, and it has nothing to do with your syllabus this semester. How about keep reading and find writers whose style you enjoy. And of course, practice paraphrasing. Now, what I want to emphasize with paraphrasing is take words or sentences that you use daily. Okay. So start with what you use and then paraphrase it for more formal tone. So what I like to suggest that is that you can actually see how it will make a difference for you. Okay, so remember at some point you will maybe need to defend your degree or to go into your master's or your doctorate. You might not be able to speak about that. You may be also need to present about what you're studying at some point. So get to the habit of speaking in an academic way. Okay. So by taking your own personal vocabulary and then swapping it around with a more formal vocabulary, see how you can change it. Now, with caution, I do not mean change your entire vocabulary. Okay. I just speak in a formally academic tone. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you're speaking to your friends, think about the phrases you use to say hello, to, introduce a topic that you decide about. Maybe you go to see the new movie, and then you would think, well, how can I say, let's go and watch a new movie? Okay, that's slightly academic way. You don't necessarily need to use the actual words when talking to your friends or typing a message, but it helps you to sort of not separate academic language as a separate foreign language. It's something that is just a little structured. And I think it's the mindset that needs to happen because we are so used to talking to an everyday language and it's just casual and formal language comes with its own rigid rules and it sounds so different from what we have spent years learning that there is that big disconnect. Okay, so in order to make formal language click and seem a little accessible, that's what I would suggest. Just have a look at the academic word list and see which words you can incorporate and how many new words can you add to your own personal vocabulary. Okay. So by doing that, it grows your vocabulary. So when you're writing, words will flow with much more ease. Now, very, very important. I do like to tell students that come to me to always compare your writing to your rubrics, okay? So one of the first things I'll do if you ever come to see me is I'll be like, let's look at your assignment, let's look at the rubrics, and let's go over what we need to incorporate into our writing. And always keep the first and first most in your mind because you can write according to what's needed and what is being graded. Okay. So it'll also have a type of style they would want you to write. If you're doing a report, your writing style will be different from an essay. So always look at your assignment rubrics and read it again. Make sure you know what you're needing to do. And if not, I haven't seen myself and we can go over it, okay? And very important, seek constructive feedback. Now, it is difficult when you spend a lot of time and you're writing, you've edited, and now you're sending it off to myself or you bring it to your lecturer and you're like, please give me feedback. And it may or may not be the feedback that you require or you've been wanting to hear. Now, when I say this, all of us, every single person in academia has received feedback that has not been going to be. Okay, I don't think there's been a single person. I could be wrong. Again, that's a personal view. It needs to be substantiated with evidence. But we are all on a learning path. When I started my degree compared to now, my writing has changed. Okay. So it comes with time, you will master it. But feedback is essential for academic growth. Okay. In conclusion, I'd like to talk to you and remind you that academic is formal, okay? It's all formal, it is objective, and very importantly, precise. And more importantly, evidence-based. So your academic voice needs to incorporate all of these things. Needs to be formal, needs to be objective, needs to be precise, and evidence-based. Developing this voice does take practice and a lot of reflection, but it makes your writing stronger and more credible. The more you practice, the more natural it will become. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.